Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Kevin here, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about how you can take your photos from looking like this to looking like this. So I actually posted this photo set, this pair of photos to Instagram a couple weeks ago now, and I kind of posted it as a before after edit sort of thing. And I actually had quite a few people reach out to me either in the comments or via DM, and they're like, hey Kev, like how did you get that crazy magenta purple color cast off of her skin and kind of get her skin looking somewhat normal again? Like how did you do that? What process did you use? So I thought, what the hell, let's go ahead and actually make a video and walk you guys through exactly what I do. So yeah, let's without further ado, let's just jump into Photoshop and let's get started on this whole process. So let's do it. All right, guys, so here is the image. This is the one that I posted to my Instagram the other day. So I've actually already done my Lightroom edits. I brought it into Photoshop. I've done my frequency separation. That whole part's done. I'm ready to start playing with the skin tones and trying to get them to look real. So this is kind of that starting off point for affecting the tones. So once you're at this point with your image, the first thing that you're going to want to do in order to kind of get the skin tones to start to look normal again is actually go down here to your adjustment layers and create a hue adjustment layer. So once you have that up, you're going to get this properties menu. You're going to go down here to where it says Colorize and hit that checkbox. And then you're going to get some sort of default color that Photoshop's going to give you. And then what you're really going to want to do is just come in here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit on my image. But you're just going to want to take this hue slider and drag it somewhere along this spectrum until you start to get skin tones that begin to look normal again. Now really, if you hit the Colorize button, it should be somewhere in this red to orange to yellow section over here. So it's, for me in this particular image, I'm saying it's probably going to be like something like right here. Something like that right there looks pretty good to me, something around 23. For your particular image, it's probably gonna be a little bit different. But for me, on this particular image, 23 looks pretty good. And so I'm gonna go ahead and accept that. Now, obviously it's applied this effect to the entire image. We don't want that, we only want it to be applied to our skin. So what we're gonna need to do is go over here to your adjustment layer and hit Command I on your keyboard, and then that's gonna invert it to black and basically hide that adjustment layer from your entire image. And then what we're gonna do is paint on the layer mask to reveal it only over her skin. So we're gonna do that next. So in order to do that, we're gonna have our layer mask selected. I'm gonna hit B on my keyboard to bring up my brush tool. Make sure you have white selected for your brush, opacity 100%, a flow of about 5 or 10%. And then you're gonna wanna make sure that your brush is fairly soft. In this particular case, mine is at 0%, so it is very, very soft, as soft as it can be. And then what you're gonna wanna do is just come in here and just kind of start painting on that layer mask to reveal that hue saturation layer. And slowly but surely, it's gonna start to reveal that color below. Now actually for this particular image, what I'm gonna do is bump my flow to about 30%, just for demonstration purposes. If I was doing this like for real and this was something I was gonna post and deliver to the model, the client, whatever, I would definitely do probably a lower flow and take my time more. But just for the sake of this tutorial to move things along a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and up my flow a little bit to like 30 and just get in here and just start painting. And yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. Now, a couple things I would make note of while I'm doing this is I would say that you should probably be careful right around the hairline. Like right here, you see there's a little bit of skin that kind of juts into the hair. So make sure you're painting a little bit into the hairline to account for that, the skin that you can see through the hair. So do that. I'm gonna paint through here. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and paint over the white of her eyes, or what should be the white of her eyes, and her lips, pretty much the entire face. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward for real quick, and I'll catch up with you guys on when I'm finished with this painting. All right, so I pretty much have the entire face painted in now. Now, the next thing I'm gonna do is actually come over here to where the layer mask is. I'm gonna hold down the Option key on my keyboard and hit the layer mask. And that's gonna flip it over to this layer mask view. And then what you're gonna wanna do is if you see any places where you still see black on the interior right here, just make sure you go in and fill those in. That way, that layer mask is being completely revealed and there's no underlying like weird magenta purple colors underneath peeking through. So just go ahead and make sure that's completely filled in. That tool, or that little, I don't know what you want to call that, feature, flipping the layer mask on, really useful. Definitely use it to your advantage whenever you're doing stuff like this. It'll definitely key you in to where maybe you missed filling in. All right, so Option key, click on my layer mask, flip it back to the regular image. And then, so there we go. Now we've actually got the skin tone starting to look somewhat normal again. So now the next thing we need to do is fix the lips and fix the eyes. Clearly the eyes should not be, they need to be sort of a kind of whitish gray, not like a brownish yellow skin color. And then the same thing with the lips. Obviously the lips need to be more of a pinkish color. So we're gonna go ahead and fix those two things next. And we're gonna start with the lips, and we're gonna do those pretty much in a very similar fashion as we did her skin. So we're gonna go down here and we're gonna create a new layer, or a hue, a new hue saturation layer. And then we're gonna hit Colorize again, and then basically the same thing. We're gonna go ahead and just adjust this hue slider until we get a color that kind of matches or resembles natural lip color. And actually something like right there is looking pretty good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and collapse that. Command I on the keyboard to flip the layer mask back to black. B on the keyboard to select my brush tool. Make sure you're painting with white. And again, I'm gonna go ahead and just paint with a flow of 10% and a very soft brush, and just reveal that layer mask and that kind of the pinkish color below, and then fix her skin or her lip color that way. I just bumped my my flow back up to 20 to make this go a little bit quicker. So yeah, for you, I'd definitely recommend sticking to maybe 10%, 5%, and take your time, but I'm just kind of trying to speed through this a little bit quickly. And the same thing, flip my layer mask, see what it looks like. I'll probably fill that part in a little bit right there. And that looks pretty good. So let's back out just a touch, and here's the before and here's the after, and that looks pretty good to me. I like that. It looks fairly natural, it's not too strong. Yeah, I'm happy with the lip color change. That looks good to me. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to fix the eyes. They're obviously kind of a weird brownish, tan, beige, not white kind of color. Definitely want to fix that. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna go down and create another adjustment layer, except this time it's gonna be a black and white adjustment layer. And then like before, Command I to invert. Hopefully you guys are getting the idea here. And then we're gonna go in here with the brush, and we're gonna paint in that black and white layer right over what should be the white of our eyes. All right, so there we go. So we went ahead and painted in the black and white layer over our eyes. Now, obviously you might be thinking like, Kev, that looks ridiculous. Why the hell did you do that? Well, really, we're just trying to get that color out of our eyes, and then we're gonna go back in and fill new color over the top. And so really kind of using the black and white layer is just kind of giving us a new base layer to work off of, and then we're gonna build color back on top of that. And on top of it, like the natural, like the white of your eyes isn't typically really pure white. It's got kind of like a whitish gray tint to it. So by doing the black and white layer, we're really giving ourselves that base gray, and then we're gonna go in and kind of paint some white over the top of that, and then blend the two together and get us a much more natural looking white of the eye kind of color. So in the next step, once we've painted the black and white in, is to add the white on top like I just said. So to do that, we're gonna go down here and create a new blank layer. And then now with, again, the brush tool selected, soft brush, opacity 100%, flow around 10 or 20%, and brush color of white, we're gonna go in here and just paint very lightly a little bit of white on top of her eyes. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit just like that. Very gentle, not a whole lot. And that looks pretty good. Okay, cool. Now that right there is a little bit too much, right? So we need to blend that just a little bit. So we're gonna do that in a couple different ways. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and go to our blending modes, and we're gonna take that from normal and drop it down to soft light. So that's gonna go ahead and lessen that effect a little bit that way. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go over here on this layer to the right-hand side of it, and we're just gonna double click on it, which is gonna bring up this layer style panel. And then with this selected, we're gonna go down here to this underlying layer section. And then what we're gonna do is we're going to use this blend diff tool. And basically what this is gonna do is it's gonna allow us to remove that layer from the darkest area of the eye and only allow it to remain in the brightest area of the eye. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So we're gonna take the slider on the left-hand side and just drag it to the right a little bit. And what this is doing is it's removing that white that we just painted. It's removing it from the darkest area of her eye. And then what we can do is we can actually hold down the Option key and actually separate this slider a little bit as well. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna help blend that effect a little bit more naturally. So we're just gonna have to separate those, and if you look in the white of our eyes, you can kind of see what I mean. As I slide this back and forth, you can see where it's actually removing that white and blending it in to that underlying layer just a little bit more. And so something like right there looks pretty good to me. That seems to have a nice soft transition. And then here's our before, here's our after. That's looking pretty good. It's maybe just a little bit too white. It's probably a little bit too fake looking still. So like with anything in Photoshop, you can always reduce the effect of it by just going up to the opacity layer and dropping it down. So I'm gonna drop it to something like maybe 50, see what that looks like. And that looks pretty good. I might drop it just a little bit more, maybe to something like about 40. And like that right there looks pretty good to me. I might go back up just a touch. It's looking a little bit too gray to me now. Maybe like 42. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. And it's very subtle, right? You know, and that's like with most things in Photoshop, it probably should be subtle. You don't want it to be too extreme, because that's when things start to look very fake and unnatural. But to me right there, that looks pretty good. So if we zoom back all the way out, like we're already like 99% of the way there. We only have a few more things to do to really sell this and bring it home. So the next thing that we're gonna do in order to sell it, or really the final things that we're gonna do in order to really sell this change, is actually do a little bit of dodging and burning. And really I do this to pretty much any portrait I do, because with any retouching, whenever you're doing these sort of things, it tends to flatten the face and you kind of lose that three-dimensional look. And the dodging and burning really brings back that three-dimensional look to the face. And so that's gonna do a couple of things here. One, it's gonna help sell that transition from getting the colors from looking very purple and magenta-y to looking more normal. And it's also just gonna help with the overall flattening that all the other retouching is already done. So if that didn't make any sense, just follow along. It'll make sense once we actually go through it. So dodging and burning, let's go ahead and get started. Now, how I typically do dodging and burning, there's a bunch of different ways you can set it up. I like to use curve adjustment layers in order to do my dodging and burning, so that's what we're gonna do in this video. So I'm gonna go down here to my adjustment layers and select the curves adjustment layer. And I'm gonna go up here to my curves. A curve? I guess that's the way you call it, it's just a curve. I'm gonna go ahead and drag that up to do something like that. Command I to invert it, just like we've been doing. I'm gonna double click and rename that dodge, just to kind of keep it organized. Then we go down here and create another curves adjustment layer on top of that. And then except this time we're gonna take this curve and we're gonna drag it down to something like that. And then again, Command I to invert it, double click, rename to burn, not burn, burn. That looks better. Now with the layer mask selected, again, brush tool, painting with white, opacity 100%, flow about 10%. Hopefully you guys are trying to get the idea here. And we're gonna go in here and just start doing some natural dodging. So typically what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll actually dodge over the areas of the face that already have some natural highlights. Now, because we changed the skin tones and we basically did this colorize function, it's kind of flattened a lot of that. So as you can see, her face it's really pretty flat. There really aren't a whole lot of highlights or shadows really left on her face. So this is kind of one of those situations where you just kind of have to know where they naturally typically are and then kind of paint in those locations. So I know typically along the bridge and the nose right here, there's gonna be a little bit of a highlight. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint in right there. I'm actually gonna drop my flow to about 5%. That's looking a little too strong. So right there, and then right here in the tip of her nose, just a bit, and then right around here, a little highlight. That looks good. And then right along the cheek right here, I'm gonna put a little bit of a highlight. So I'm gonna open up my brush, make it a little bit bigger, and just paint in a little highlight right there. Maybe on the bottom part of the cheek, as well as just kind of on the forehead right here. Maybe just underneath the eye as well. And then kind of right up above the eye. All places where there's typically a natural highlight. And then I'm gonna do just a touch on her lip as well. Something like that. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm gonna do the upper lip just a bit too. Kind of blend those colors together a little bit. And again, there's typically a natural highlight right there as well. So if we back out a little bit, we do before and after, you can see before, dodging, burning, and after. Now that's looking a little strong to me, so what I might do is just drop the opacity to, I don't know, something like 65. Maybe a little more to like 50. All right, that's looking pretty good for now. Let's move on to the burning layer and let's do that. So with the burn layer mask selected, same thing. Brush tool, layer mask, make sure you're painting with whites, flow 5, 10%, opacity 100%, and we're going to do our burning. Same thing as before, I'm gonna burn pretty much all the same areas that I would typically burn on a portrait. So anywhere where hair meets skin, so right along her eyebrows, right in here around the eyes. Now burning these dark areas around her eyes is gonna increase the contrast and make her eyes pop a little bit more. That's kind of the main reason why you wanna do burning around the eyes. So that's what we're doing here. And then we're gonna do just a little bit in this hairline right here, help blend that together. And then right down here on the side. Just a touch along her cheek, right here. That looks pretty good. Let's back out, see what that looks like. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and shift select both the dodge and the burn layer and look at the before and after for dodging and burning. So that is after, that's before dodging and burning, and then that's after. Before, after, before, after. I actually might bring the dodging opacity up a little bit. I feel like maybe I went a little bit too hard on that as far as dimming it down. And that looks a lot better to me. To me, like, I don't know, maybe you guys can't see it. to me, I can definitely see it. It definitely looks a lot flatter with them turned off, and then as soon as I turn them back on, I feel like there's already a much more three-dimensional look to your face as soon as I do the dodging and burning. Yeah, to me, that's a big difference. I really like the way that looks. That looks way better, way more dynamic, way more three-dimensional, way more like an actual human and not like a 2D image. And yeah, I'm really happy with that. And really, to be honest, with the dodging and burning, that's really pretty much everything you really need to do in order to really transfer and like fix the skin tones and take off that kind of whatever color cast you have and get back to normal skin tones. This is really pretty much it. If I was doing this for real, I would definitely take my time and finesse things a little bit more just to kind of make things look a little bit more real and make sure that my edges were nice and clean. But for the most part, that's really the entire process. And so let's just go ahead and turn everything off and on from the very beginning. So right now, that's everything we've done. And then that's where we started. So that's how it looked, bringing it out of Lightroom into Photoshop and then doing frequency separation. That's before we did any sort of like skin tone fixing whatsoever. This is our starting point at the beginning of the video, and then here is our after. To me, that looks pretty darn good. Like, is it a perfect replication of skin tone? No, it's not. But is it good enough? I think so. Like, if you're looking to just kind of do a quick edit and just get the skin tones looking somewhat normal, this is a pretty good way of doing it. And it's fairly simple, it's fairly quick. You don't need a million layers in order to accomplish it. You don't need a ton of fancy tools. It's really just a handful of adjustment layers and using some layer masks and just some very basic principles of Photoshop. And you can do some pretty powerful stuff and really fix skin tones pretty darn well, if you ask me. And so that's it for this video, guys. I'm not gonna ramble on any longer. Hopefully you guys found it useful. Hopefully you got some good information out of it. Hopefully you can apply it to some of your images and maybe wow some of your clients, your models, your whoever. Yeah, so anyway, if you liked the video, like I said, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you wanna see more videos like this, you wanna see my crazy ass ramble around a little bit more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. So until next time, take care, stay safe, keep shooting. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.